Hello, everyone. We are back. As what happened last week, we are back. As nothing happened really last week. But anyway, welcome back to the Swinging Swordsman, the D&D show that every once in a bit has everyone from around the States plus one dude in Australia. But not today, I guess. As always, I am your humble dungeon master, Dan. I am a theater freak and a TTRPG geek, and we are on episode 33 of Fury of the Outlands, otherwise known as part whatever of the Maze Runner story arc. Before we begin, as always, we have a couple of advertisements, we'll say, because honestly I forgot what other word I was going to use. But anyway,
shoutouts.
This was
that works too.
8 Shadow Legends.
No,
Don't do that. You're gonna get us sued.
with the amount of times I've tried to advertise Final Fantasy XIV in the last month, we would have been sued already.
Oh yeah.
Nah, they're chill.
That being said, Carlo, get the free trial, you fuck. No. Moving on, and not outing Carlo again. If you want to know what our lives are like outside the campaign, but not outside of D&D, head over to the podcast on Spotify known as Guys. We still have not gotten Dusk on it yet, and we do not apologize.
I feel left out.
Not your fault. It's not even my fault. There's no faults in this. It just is. It's just a crying shame, and it'll stay that way. But it's got little tidbits of information about all of us. It's got lots of nerd rambling from yours truly, because I'm a fucking nerd. If you want to listen to a little bit of music, our buddy Wyra, who sadly isn't here, has a couple of songs out on all the music channels, Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music. Don't use Spotify if you're a cheap bastard like me. It is not worth it. Just don't. Handle for that is somewhere in existence. Spelling is bullshit because I can never remember.
If she were on, she'd kick your ass with words.
Ireland. WARYAAYALEN. You're welcome, Ira.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well, it's probably going to keep getting me until I actually... See, here's the funny thing. I can remember the full name of Percy DeRollo from Vox Machina, yet I cannot remember the spelling of Wyra's sort of last name. Is it her middle name or last name at this point? I honestly have no idea anymore.
It's Ireland.
Yeah, I know what it is. I just don't know if it's her last name now or if it's a middle name or something.
Why is it something different now?
I don't fucking...
She used it as like her stage name.
There's that too. Okay, that makes sense. On a different note, if you want to see a bunch of art stuff, our buddy Angel does art on various channels at Tenshi Art. Go.
New video coming out on Friday, like usual, part 2.
And if you want to see a complete rookie watch the entire Star Wars, Carlo has a video out where he actually watches Star Wars for the first time. Link will be in the description below. Carlo, you better actually do it this time. And as always, because it is a reoccurring joke, have y'all ever heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV?
At this point, it's not a joke anymore. You just keep saying it.
See, that's the joke.
Nah, eventually it's gonna grind their gears wrong, and then nobody's gonna watch this. Be like, always about Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh
Okay,
man,
hey,
you should have heard me fucking face paint, like,
to be
2 years
fair.
ago.
Okay, to be fair. It's all Angel's fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Because I did the same thing, but I didn't, like I did not
Not as
quit.
yeah,
That's why
and to
maybe
be
supposed to be taking a back seat to it now.
hey, and to be fair, the free trial is so worth it. WoW players, I'm sorry, but
Let's
I'm just
jump off
saying.
this train let's jump off this train before it burns down.
Hey, I'm just saying, when you're just looking at free trials alone, WoW is less than mid.
I had a joke, but I'm not going to say it. Let's just move on. Let's move on.
Okay. That's my piece. That's my piece. I'm not gonna make any more cracks because. Okay, but let me phrase it this way.
No.
I'm not gonna make any. I'm not
Okay.
okay. I'm not gonna make any more. I'm not gonna make any more cracks this week.
You know,
Y'all
that's
gonna
fair.
All right. So recap time. Our band of adventurers, after dealing with various bullshits within the material plane, decided to help Yuri Volkanov in discovering answers behind his family's curse, in the idea of the fact that with every generation of Volkanovs, the patriarchy seems to up and vanish. Various tidbits of information passed from various people and religious members of the Outlands revealed that it wasn't just a curse, but something that was also had a bit of a divine flurry in it, as supposedly it was linked with something that involved the primordial goddess of fire, Rhea. This led to a vast hatred for Yuri, at the very least, a vast hatred towards the goddess, as he blamed her for just about everything that has happened within his family at this point. The only way for Yuri and the party to gain any decent information that could have a little more concrete than what anyone in the material plane would have would be to traverse through for lack of better words, a dungeon known as the Maze of Embers. An overlapping demi-plane between the material plane and the plane of fire that was used in means of a trial for those of religious ties to Rhea. The party made their way through the maze itself, encountering some trials, winning some, losing some, gathering information from a leftover journal of a ancestral member of Yuri's family, but also encountering another member of Yuri's family, Malachi Volkanov, who lived during the time period of the Era of Silence, which was rough, which from Malachi's perspective is about 300 or so years in the past of what is the current era. The party then eventually made their way to one last trial in which they encountered the Volkanov that basically started this all, and also turned into a paladin lich of sorts, Lord Constantine Volkanov. After brief conversations, Constantine deemed everyone, including his descendants, heretics, and decided to fight them. this almost succeeded until it didn't, in which Lord Constantine admitted to being the one that felt the most responsible, causing the Volkanov family to continuously be stuck here in the Maze of Embers, as he was the one who had a human woman enter the Maze of Embers as a means of trying to redeem herself from being possibly impersonating the goddess Rhea herself. Blasphemy.
How dare.
Because of her success and a variety of other things, Constantine was then turned into an Oathbreaker, in which the only way to redeem himself in the eyes of his goddess was to stay trapped, for lack of better words, trapped within the Maze of Embers, and to judge anyone who came across his path and to test them to see whether or not they are strong enough to truly continue on in the name of his god. Except he got his ass kicked by supposed heretics.
Get bent. Sorry.
After a few days more of traveling within the maze, the party's fallen Azamar, Icarus, realized that there was someone making their way close to their camp, which eventually led to be none other than Yuri's own father, Dmitry Volkanov.
Daddy?
The two were happily reunited once more, sharing stories, and Yuri bringing his dad up to speed about life within the material plane. And Dmitry came to explain to them that the whole thing within the Maze of Embers is a lot more complicated than the party initially thought, as it wasn't entirely Rhea who is now in control of the Maze of Embers, but none other than her, for lack of better words, demi-immortal elemental son, Ignis Vol, who has somehow managed to take control of the Maze of Embers. By what means, we have no fucking clue. But it seems that, for some reason, he is the one that is calling the shots within the maze and creating this twisted aspect of the rules that not only is leading to such extremities, or to such extremes, but is also behind the creation of the ash husks, at the very least with the ones within the maze itself. And that, and with sort of the new information on hand, the party, with Dmitry in tow and now 3 members of the Volkanov family in one adventuring party, continue their way through the maze, now in what is most definitely the side of the maze that is in the elemental plane of fire. And that is where we are now. So,
I thought you said I didn't miss that much. God.
It was a bit of a lore drop, yes, but it's not like you missed an entire fight with ash husks to where you could have just channeled divinity fuck off undead.
Hey, listen, that happened only once.
It was yes, it did, but it was the funniest part. It was the funniest of them. Anyway, you all with Dmitry and Malachi sort of continue to make your way along the maze. Now in a section of it that is most obviously not the side that is in with that resides closer to the material plane. The walls around you, while for the most part covered in ash, also exhibit signs of heated rock and magma kind of etching itself along the walls and parts of the floor itself. The air is the hottest you all have felt before, even for the Genasi in the party, who, as of right now, are all definitely glowing brightly as they get closer and closer to these ancestral, well, for lack of better words, the ancestral birthplace of the Fire Genasi in this case. The only other thing that is glowing maybe just as brightly is none other than Icarus's spell tech horse. But that's only because the fucker's made out of metal.
The robot unicorn attack.
Oh god, we're not sticking a horn onto Nugget. Anyway. You all... Frost, even in your case, where you are a dragonborn of a colder variety, it is slightly difficult even for you to deal with the heat, but because of the fact that at this point, anytime you try and exude sheets of ice along your scales to cool yourself off, the ice immediately turns to steam, not even being able to 100% touch your scales. So every time you do, you just exude steam, which evaporates almost as instantly as it comes off you.
Which would only exude more heat. Therefore, I stopped doing it.
Yeah, after a bit, you do stop and whatnot. After what has been a good bit more walking along within the maze, you guys do come around a corner to where another door appears in front of you. Unlike the ones you've seen before, where it has just been sort of a veil of, for lack of better words, a Dark Souls door, and another one that seems to be almost simplistic in its design. This one is different by far, as it is polished, for one, whereas the doors you've come across are, for the most part, of standard wood or stone. This one is of... Bless you. This one is of stone, or looks close to stone, but it is polished and glossy. The door itself is also embossed with a variety of different gleaming metals and looks to be other sorts of gemstone-like material that sort of line itself along each side of the door itself, almost giving a sort of fancy or regal appearance to the door itself.
I kicked the door, but no, just kidding.
Yeah, no, Dimitri kind of looks and brings his hand up to it and is like, I've not seen this one before. I've been through a variety of other doors here within the maze, but I don't think I've seen one as furnished as this.
think this could be another trial.
Most certainly important enough to perhaps warrant such a thing.
It is possible.
Does anyone want to open it?
Can I scan around the environment or something to see if there is like something I can detect that? I guess what I'm trying to say is something that is off about this.
Go ahead and give me a insight.
Where the hell is my? Okay, computer, you can stop being slow now. All right. Did it come up? Oh, there it is.
Yep. All right. So with a 15, because of the fact that the trials you have encountered, whether save for maybe one, have all had doors to start them. The one where everyone was transported into the memories or past of members of the Volkanov line was more of a veiled mist than door, but to a certain extent it does count in a way. The trial within the chapel against Lord Constantine itself was a door. The only trial you can think of that didn't have the door was the one with the manifestations of of possible guilt, whereas that just kind of accumulated in a sort of ashened mist around you without necessarily having any form of a threshold or entrance. But the only thing about all three of those that kind of correlated was they were veiled in either simplicity or mystery. Whereas this is definitely by far the fanciest door within the maze you have seen. Even the entrance to the maze itself wasn't this fancy.
Oh yeah, someone's out to get it.
It's suspicious, to say the least.
Probably
Very sus.
probably something or someone on the other side that doesn't fancy us much.
But he does fancy his doors. I mean, look at it. It's very fancy. He says with heavy sarcasm.
Well, I say, well, guess there's no need to avoid it anymore. And he's gonna bring out his gun. He's gonna shoot it down.
Bang!
You're gonna waste a bullet on that?
All
I
right.
have ammo for days and years and months.
Go ahead and roll to hit the door.
Please hit the door.
Oh, I have to roll.
Roll to hit the door. He rolls like
Roll
a 2.
to hit the door.
Okay, so, boom.
Oh,
25.
nice.
And
Well, you definitely hit the door.
Oh, what a waste of a nat 20.
Actually, can I use the chroma caliber to? Oh wait, can I use the chroma caliber to cast chromatic shot?
Ooh.
No,
Okay.
I'm not gonna do that. I realized.
All right.
He has a vendetta against this door.
Oh, damn. Even max damage?
What on
Jesus
earth is
Christ.
happening?
So you just take your fancy new gun.
You're like,
Just
I
aim
swear
it.
Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
You take your fancy new gun, aiming it at the door. You pull the trigger. The bullet does hit, and as it does, it because of the fact that for the most part it is primarily stone in design, the impact does leave sort of a spurt of dust as soon as it hits inside, and you do see that there is a fairly decent hole in the door now.
Congratulations. You put a hole
Wait,
in the
hole
door.
in the door, or like did the door blow down itself, or is just there's just a
It's
massive hole there?
it's a fancy stone door. It's not made of wood. Even with a nat 20, you're not gonna be able to fully blast a
Oh, I
stone
had that
door.
one.
But
You're
as
lucky to have damaged the door at all.
I blast a Kamehameha at the door.
oh my god, like after you've shot the door and you'll see the bullet hole inside, the doors
Before-
do open.
I was gonna say, before he decides to do anything more to the door, I'm just gonna hold out a hand and like, there's a door handle, right?
Yeah, but Frost, before you're able to actually reach for the door handle, and
Shit.
the door does open inward to whatever lies ahead.
Well, now we know it was a push door.
And
Oh.
unlike the door to the chapel, whereas that was fairly dark when you first entered, this one is fairly well lit to where all of you can see inside at this point, even those without dark vision. Oh shit, that's like all three of you. What the fuck am I thinking? Or no, Genasi do have dark vision, I think.
Do I?
No.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
I can't remember every frickin' racial stat ability.
Yeah, I guess so.
Only the one I can only remember the ones that I really enjoy, and even then, I don't remember names. Anyway, you all see as the door opens and you peer inside, you see what looks to be almost a great hall of sorts. Braziers are scattered throughout this hall in particular, so illuminating the place, but also creating partial clouds of like light ash that kind of and smoke that exude out from it. The hall is very, very fancy.
Oh no.
The walkway in front of you leading to the other end is led by some sort of carpet leading to the other side. The carpet walkway. The materials that build this hall are almost unblemished, smooth. You see that along with the braziers, there are what looks to be various indents within the floor and the walls that look to be lined with magma being held back by some sort of very powerful glass of sorts, or maybe clear stone. Or clear crystal. You're not entirely sure. The stone itself, used for the floors, the pillars, and the rest of the walls, are as smooth as the door. Some bits of it even a glossy black, as if made by obsidian. Within
Sorry.
within the roof above, you see a chandelier that illuminates whatever places within the roof are unable to be illuminated by the magma and the braziers. And at the very end of the hall, you see a raised platform in which sits a throne. Again, but unlike the throne in the chapel that Constantine sat on, this one is taller, bigger, more prominent. And sitting in this throne is what looks to be another figure watching you all. as you make your way through. And as you do, he says in a not necessarily graveled, but a almost cracked-ish voice is like, I was expecting you to at least knock, not necessarily shoot my fucking door.
Well, maybe don't have a door there in the first place.
I apologize for his insolence, sir.
Why would you put
You you all get to a point where you're about maybe halfway into this hall and you get a good look at this guy. This man looks as if he is made out of embers and ash. Not like Constantine was as a lich, but literally made with various glowing embers and wisps of ash that kind of dissipate with as he moves and whatnot. His eyes glow not brightly, but with sort of the same intensity as you would see of a piece of wood within a fire, giving almost a dark warmth to it, for lack of a better words. The figure itself is also looks as if he is wearing some sort of robe. The colors itself a sort of gray and sort of a purplish dark maroon. The chest piece itself loose fitting and folding in front of him, exposing at the very least part of his chest. The rest of it going down to what looks to be a set of formal slacks of some sort. He looks to all of you and goes, "So you're the newcomers in here. I was wondering who else would be snooping around."
Indeed, we are.
I suppose introductions are in order.
Who are you?
Ah, yes. Well, I do suppose my name isn't that well known. At the very least in this era. A shame that. He gets up from his throne, arms sort of raised at his sides, and goes, I am the patron within this maze. The one... Oh, fuck it, I'm not into this 100%, but I am Ignis Vol.
Oh,
Friends have called me Iggy before, but...
ain't no fucking way. Iggy?
Hell.
Yeah,
He's
like,
just
I-
We just start making
Hang on,
fun
hang
of a fucking fire demigod.
No.
Yeah.
This is me out of character. Like, what the? Yeah, what is...
Yeah,
Oh, God.
But yeah, no, he goes, I am Ignis Vol, the Arisen deity of ash, rebirth, and destruction. Depending on how you look at it.
So you're the reason we're in this maze.
Hmm. I've been waiting to see you.
Well, I've never really been one for mystery 100%. It's one thing that some of the old guards of the Pantheon never quite was willing to let go.
He's actually... You know what? He's gonna try something. Uh,
Oh shit.
Raytheon, he's gonna pull out his gun again. He's not gonna actually try to shoot, but you can tell that he's a little heated because he's the reason why Carlo may never see his family again. Oh shit, not Carlo. Shit. What's his?
Who's Carlo?
Yuri.
Shit. Yuri. I'm sorry, I blanked. Brain
Jesus
fart.
Christ.
No. Yeah, he's a little peeved, so he's gonna take the gun. He's gonna say, "No, I only want to say this once. Let me, my everyone here, and those who are trapped out. Why are you doing this?"
You see, Ignis Vol is not even phased by you pulling the gun. In fact, he's probably more annoyed than anything, but he just kind of go, I do suppose there is some manner of explanation that
You're goddamn
might...
right.
For one, it is a matter of, for lack of better words, of interest. You see, the old gods are weak. All they want to hold on to is their own tradition. The way that things have run for ages, and originally, they supposedly had no real interest in even restoring the arcane wellspring within the material plane. That was shut off because you mortals were oh so ignorant. You see, when the arcane wellspring was shut off from the material plane, the Prime and the Primordial all went to their own respected realms, and were more than happy to keep themselves in reclusion. But it was the Arisen generation, in part, that persuaded them to restore the wellspring and give mortals one more chance. And even then, there were a variety of things in which they showed manners of difficulty. In this particular case, involving your friend here and his family line, my mother, the primordial goddess of fire herself, was unable... Oh, you good, Dusk?
Keep going.
Alright. My mother, the primordial goddess of fire herself, was not willing to incite discipline in situations in which she was disgraced. Oh, I'm sure by now you all have heard the story of the human girl and that whole debacle.
Yes.
Has
I'm familiar.
Well, when Miss Mortal was given the opportunity to be given power, to be given title, to be given strength within this realm. She outright refused, and albeit not necessarily in the most polite way. And what did my oh so primordial mother do in response? Absolutely nothing. She was not offended. She was not aggravated. She just simply allowed such an insult to take place. And, well, that in itself was proof enough that her and most likely every other of the old gods were not entirely fit to lay claim to the material plane for much longer.
So you saw fit to take their place, is that right?
Well, I don't see myself as a king of gods, at the very least, but king of the fire plane? Well, it would need a new custodian once Rhea was given the opportunity to step down. And to be fair, No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and when did she decide to step down? When you asked? Or when she was told?
Understand that, for one, us of a divine bloodline are a lot more patient than mortals, or at the very least those who share a sliver of what we call a lifetime. Such plans for overtaking the Pantheon don't quite come at a fast pace for us. But I will say there is a war starting to brew within the old gods and within some of the Arisen. And a god needs a following. I admit, the whole thing with the maze isn't the most well thought out of executions, but that's not entirely my own fault. You are only able to control that in which has already been given by the cosmos. And as I said, I am the Arisen of death, or not necessarily death, I do apologize with that, but I am the Arisen of destruction and rebirth. To a certain extent, they are almost one and the same.
Well, all that is fun, nice and dandy and everything, but I think it's about that time you get everyone to go back. You played your little game. You've done whatever you needed to do.
For the most part, yes. This whole situation with the maze has been a bit of an experiment, not necessarily gone correct, but I'm not complaining too much. However, it isn't quite over yet. I'll admit, the idea... No. I'll admit that the appearance of gathering you here in something not necessarily as familiar as some of the other trials you have been in here might make you assume that this may be the end, but there is one last trial amongst all of you, at the very least. Mainly because you are the only group that have, for the most part, interested me, compared to some of the others that have made their way in here.
And what, pray tell, is that trial?
A choice. Not one of being stuck or being able to escape. That would make things a little bit easy. But the trial ahead will involve, at the very least, or at the very most, one of you specifically, in which you must make a choice and be willing to accept the consequences. Sounds gruesome, I'll admit, but the whole thing about all of this is, for the most part, those who have made their way in here have made it in here through faith. They see themselves idolized within the religious dogma that comes within this domain and within this maze. And to be fair, that makes them very boring. You see Malachi in the back goes, "What are you fucking talking about? I'm not religious." True. But your accent is very weird, and you do hold some religious values to a certain extent. You just see Malachi scoff and start muttering in Irish primordial, in which Ignis Vol just kind of rolls his eyes and he's like, "I can understand you." Though to be fair, your accent is still weird as fuck.
His accent's great. Don't be mean to my man Malachi.
You
Sorry,
see,
this is not Frost. This is a disembodied voice.
you see Ignis Vol look mainly over to you, Yuri, and to your father, and go, "Both of you have been by far the most interesting. Mainly because you're the two Volcanovs in here that aren't tied to the religious honor that has been bestowed upon the rest of your family. And to my own surprise, that in itself is the strength that has been able to have you come so far in comparison to your ancestors. Oh, I admit some of them are still alive within this maze. But they also are more tied to my own devotion, more so than either of you.
Good thing I have no devotion.
I don't even know who the hell you are."
You will.
Oh, threatening.
No, promising.
I am curious, at the very least with you two, Genasi in particular. Not necessarily with most of your friends. Albeit I can sense the ties of divinity to the White One, points over to Frost. And your tiefling seems in some manner familiar, but I cannot quite place it. Icarus just kind of looks and is like, not a tiefling. Whatever. Tell me, firstly, seeing as you all have asked my name, in particular, what are your two names?
Yuri. This is my dad, Dimitri.
A tie of father and son. I'd say that's heartwarming, but... well, I've been accused of not having a heart lately.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah.
A mystery that will never be solved.
Sarcastically insulting. I'm almost impressed. Tell me, Yuri. What is it about this force that has been able to get you so far? How do you feel that it seems to be more powerful than even that of divine faith?
If you say the power of friendship, I swear to God.
It's just the power of my friends. No.
No, it's the power of family.
You see that
Like,
one?
for
He
real.
can kill 6 ash husks with a snap of his fingers.
No, it's all about the
I'm gonna
Dominic's
shut up
treasure,
now.
that family.
Family. No, Yuri says, to tell you the truth, I have not identified what has allowed me to continue. I know that I am weak. I know that I have had fallings in the past. And I know that I, as much as I wish it otherwise, have very limited magical capabilities. You speak of it as though I have control over it. I have no idea. And perhaps that makes me naive. But I've just kind of been rolling with the punches.
You see that Ignis Vol turns over to Dimitri, who goes, I will admit that my own capabilities are not entirely those of faith, as those of my supposed ancestors. But at the very least, I can say that part of my own driving force is that of knowledge and of a promise to my own family and to those I have seen be unjustly held accountable for actions not entirely up to their own. Much like the human woman you supposedly keep referring to. Which, by the way, she does have a name. Oh, right, you're that Genasi. I keep forgetting you exist and have been in and out of this section of the maze. Yes, I have. And do you know what I have learned in that entirety? That For one, you are by far one of the most ruthless demi-deities, or as you claim to yourself to be, one of the Arisen deities that I have had the unfortunate circumstance of being able to know. Not only do you supposedly wish to claim this plane for yourself, but you have also trapped an innocent woman, removing her from not only her own life, but her own family. Just because of the fact that she refused to take power. You see, Ignis Vol is definitely looking very annoyed in this situation. And he goes, "Well, I see you've made your choice." And you see he waves his hand. You watch as ash from the braziers around begin to puff out in force and begin to swirl towards your party, towards Dimitri. They begin to swirl around his feet, making their way up. You watch as patterns of designs begin to glow brightly on his body. As he ends up becoming what seems to be almost constricted, bound by some force. Ignis Vol turns to you, Yuri, and goes, "Oh, don't worry. This won't be... Well, not sure I can entirely guarantee anything. I'm not fate for crying out loud, but I think for the time being, I will hold on to your father for the time being." And with a quick wave of his hand, the swirl of smoke around and ash around Dimitri rises up to where he's obscured and then instantly falls down, dissipating. Your father no longer where he was standing.
I just found him.
Zaddy, no.
You see, after he does this, he goes, "Don't worry your little mortal head. He's not dead. I just merely transported him to the end of the line."
That sounds like death. I say this out of character, but also in character at the same time. That sounds like the death.
Yeah.
That
You'll
sounds
be
like
able
it's good for me.
to You'll be able to see him again, and when you do, the choice and the final test will be set in front of you. And I do hope you at the very least make this interesting. If not for your friends, at the very least for... Well, I would say for my sake, but... It's not entirely my goals that are on the line here. Nor is it entirely just yours.
What do you intend to do with us?
Well, you unfortunately are tied to a faith in which I am not able to break or deviate from, so you, Dragonborn, are fairly lucky. The rest of you, and I guess you as well, Dragonborn. The only thing I ask is for you to make your way to the final test of this maze. And I will say, if the outcomes are deemed, I promise I will send you back to the material plane. Back to your friends, your families, to your dismal life in a land that has basically forsaken itself.
Everyone else too.
We shall
at the very
see.
least, those who hasn't completed the maze yet and are lost. They deserve at least that.
If it is within such power, then why not?
Your self-proclaimed. I don't even know what the title is you gave yourself. I honestly forgot. But what was it again? It was like he had a self-proclaimed title, right?
The Arisen Deity of Ash, Rebirth, and Destruction.
Yeah. So you're the self-proclaimed Arisen deity. You should be able to do these things, these awesome powers.
You see, he looks to you, Arakion, like actually looking at you, not with annoyance, but almost in observation as he goes, "You know, he was right about you. You are a sarcastic one."
Only to those I don't like.
Well, either way. Allow yourselves to continue through the maze, make it to the final trial, and we shall see what the outcome is. But in the meantime, I have a human to catch. And I promise, Genasi, that your father will remain alive and untouched by my powers for the time being.
I expect that promise to be upkept.
I am a god, not a demon.
Then swear on your godhood.
Wow. You're a lot more smarter than I gave you all credit for. But then again, I give all mortals a bit of uncredibility. Very well, if that is what you wish. Then I swear on my godhood and on my domain within the Maze of Embers that the father of this Genasi here will remain alive and untouched by my own powers.
Something tells me that you're going to come up with a loophole to that.
As
Swear
I
that
said,
you will remain untouched entirely.
Whether that's by your hand or by anyone else that you have under your wing.
I can only promise so much. As I said, within my own powers, he will remain untouched. But there are other forces within this maze that do not stretch within my within fealty of myself.
You demigods are
I-
impossibly tricky.
Demigods are impossibly assholish.
Demigods, other arisen deities, and other such partially immortal creatures have made their way through this maze before. Some of which fairly recently, as a matter of fact. And while I said I can promise the safety from my powers and from those under me, anything outside of my own domain I cannot entirely. Fortunately, even some of the Arisen deities don't all believe in the idea of going to war with the Prime and the Primordial ones. But as I said, I promise that anything within my domain, my service, or my control will not harm his father, pointing to Yuri, in any shape or form.
I suppose that will have to do then.
I guess so.
I'll take it.
Good. Now, before I decide to vanish, I will say I have one particular question for your very divinely following friend here. As I can tell you have ties to a divine, that much is fairly obvious, but I'll admit I can't quite pinpoint as to who has you under their wing.
I wonder what his intentions for asking such a question might be. Is there a way I could find out?
I'm gonna say roll insight.
Alright, let me swap to the app real quick. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure. Buttons. Probably would have been quicker if I just ran over to my computer. Insight. That is a 12.
Well, so you're not entirely sure if Ignis Vol has any major hidden agenda as he's asking that, but at the very least, you do sense that his question is, in a decent majority, sort of a curiosity sense.
I'm not certain that you have earned the privilege to know my god.
Well, aren't you getting to be an even more interesting one? Maybe I should have asked you to make the choice, but... Oh well, the die's been cast at this point.
Well then, farewell. May we never meet again. I'm gonna
I
just
doubt
stand there.
that. But I'll at the very least see you, Yuri, at the last trial. And as he says that, he vanishes within a puff of ash. And you watch as the great hall itself, while it originally looked like it was a great hall in itself, the entire surrounding and the materials themselves begin to dissipate and crumble in ash until it changes the surroundings to where you are now once again within the ever ash-covered stone halls of the Maze of Embers.
I look over to Arakion and I say, I wish you shot his door a few more times.
Yeah, you see Malachi just stand there, so like, so what exactly the fuck just happened there?
My dad.
We have attracted interest.
Right. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure that's a good thing right now.
When it comes to gods, it's almost never a good thing.
It's easy for you to say you're a cleric.
He's just gonna chuckle and start walking.
Malachi then makes his way over to you, Yuri, and goes, "Hey, you alright?"
To be honest, no. I feel frustrated as all hell. I just got my dad back and I'm feeling like I'm back at square one again.
Well, at the very least, he did say he'd keep his word and that Dimitri wouldn't be harmed. I mean, he might seem to be a devious bastard, but well, we did kind of make him swear in his godhood about it.
I don't think he technically is a god, so that might be a loophole in itself.
There's always a loophole with these contracts.
Well, I'll admit I'm not entirely certain as to how the whole Arisen deity situation ended up being a thing, but from what it sounds like, a lot of your newer generation of gods didn't necessarily start out that way. I mean, Dimitri told me that, one of the Arisen deities used to be a dwarf back in Elisari or something like that.
Those who wield godly powers are not always gods.
I do suppose that's true. And at the very least, this fucker seems to be, at the very least, a demigod, considering that he's supposedly Rhea's son, which, honestly, to be fair, I thought he would have more fire on him. Did anyone not necessarily find that a little bizarre? I mean, supposedly he was the first fire elemental after Rhea became a god. But he himself has said that he is more of a figure of ash, which, albeit, is related to fire in a certain sense, but
If he's a god of rebirth and destruction, then it makes sense that he would have more ash than fire. The aftermath of a fire's wrath is ash.
I do suppose that's fair, but now at the very least it's making me wonder. Who did Rhea shack up with to get a fucker like that?
That always is like one of the things I wonder about. Divine bloodlines are always complicated as hell.
Well, supposedly the primordial deities were all originally elementals. As for the prime deities, I'm not entirely sure how they got started. Any of the lore that I've heard about just usually says that just usually has them already created and whatnot, and not necessarily being birthed from an even higher power than that.
Possible.
Still, it's a little bizarre.
He says he's an Arisen deity, too. So perhaps he was merely adopted by the goddess Rhea.
I mean, that might be the case, but from what it seems like, and this is a completely outsider's perspective, it just seems like Arisen deity is just a label that's given to the new generation of gods, no matter how they pop up. I mean, I'll admit that I have, like, none of them, as far as I know, existed 100% of my time, as, well, gods weren't entirely around as much as they were in previous eras, but like I said, bringing an example, the Dwarven one that I was talking about, I'd heard about him before but he was definitely seen as more of a originally started as a hero of divine blessing rather than just straight up as a god. And actually, I think that story also is a little Rhea related too. Dear gods, that is actually a lot terrifying now. So, since I'm now on this tangent, at the very least, how many of you are actually knowledgeable about the story of Corden?
Not me.
May I make a history check to see if I recall?
You can make a history or a religion check.
Gotcha. They're the
Ooh,
same.
can I do the same?
Yeah, go ahead.
That is an 18.
You said a
Okay.
religion check or
History or religion check.
how high is my? Oh wow, 28. Ooh,
God
natural
damn.
20. Damn.
Okay, so at Arakion, you'd probably know this more in a historical sense because you're, and at the very least, maybe a small bit of religious because you were friends with Charisse, who was a cleric. Frost, you would definitely know this as being a member of, as being a cleric itself. Corden was a dwarf that lived like pretty close to during the early years of Mithrin before all of the nations were kind of finalized out and whatnot. And at that point, Elisari was primarily seen as a continent of elves. Back then, the dwarves didn't have a set empire at the time and were seen more as nomads. Corden was one of these dwarves originally who eventually became a hero within dwarven circles to the point of eventually setting up his clan within the mountains to the east of Elisari, which initially started a lot of heated discussions and battles with the elves until the point where it's not necessarily that either of the elves or dwarves won, but they eventually came to a standstill in which the elves decided that allowing the dwarves to have a section of the continent wasn't necessarily the worst idea to have, but they gave the dwarves the eastern mountain ranges of Elisari, which for elves were primarily uninhabitable to have a decent civilization. But Corden was very well skilled with smithing and stone forgery to where he helped build a nation within the mountains itself. This eventually led to the Dwarven Empire, which eventually got named as Corden Cordan bore, or Cordan's reach, if you're not Dwarven. And in his death, or just moment, like when he was on his deathbed, he was given the opportunity to be blessed with divinity so that he would be seen as a continued icon for the dwarves throughout generations. Originally, he did supposedly refuse. However, the dwarves worshipped him anyway, to the point where his spirit decided to give in and become a god. And so he was eventually labeled as one of the Arisen deities, and probably one of the older generation of the Arisen deities, and was given the domain of being the god of blacksmithing and the forge.
As we're walking and he asks this question, I'm going to say, you said he existed in the first era, right?
Around the first era, yeah. You all aren't entirely sure when, because records are, at the very least within the Outlands, records aren't necessarily the best with keeping dates. And most of this story would have been passed down by word of mouth. So a lot, within the Outlands at least. So a lot of the information may have deviated from the original scripture, but it all kind of leans to where Cordan was most likely existed within the first era.
Cool. So I'm going to say, pardon the bacon. I'm going to say he was a dwarf who existed during the first era. A hero to his people, he led them to establish for what becomes Cordan's Reach in the Eastern Mountains. On his deathbed, he was offered godhood, which, through the actions of his people, he came to accept.
Right, exactly. Now, he wasn't originally born with any sort of divinity within his blood, but he did eventually become a god, which, albeit, is sort of bizarre in itself, but then again, you don't contradict a dwarf.
Spross is going to get a little philosophical in his look, and he say, it begs the question, what exactly defines a god?
Oh my.
Ooh.
Now that is a good question. I'll give you that.
Is it a creature of divine being and blood who has ungodly power, or is it a creature who is attributed to a concept, such as Cordan and the Forge?
See,
or
that
is
is
it
definitely
something else entirely? That is why making him swear on his godhood could be effective, but it also could be a simple title that he doesn't truly regard. But I believe, as gods go, his ego is quite large, and so making him swear on his godhood might be to our benefit.
well, at the very least, it definitely seems like he has the ego of a god.
He gets all philosophical again. He goes, maybe that's what makes a god. It's all-powerful being to have the ego bigger than the universe.
See, now the other interesting thing is that, like, if the idea of a god is someone that, at the very least, has a indefinitely longer lifespan than some of us here, some of us mortals and whatnot, then that sort of begs sort of the interesting aspects of just regular creatures and whatnot that already have longer lives than us, like dragons or even some members of the Fae. They technically do have longer lifespans than some of us, but would that necessarily make them, in anyone's eyes, a god of any sort?
I think the only thing that dragons and the Fae are missing are consistent worshippers. Although that might not be a problem for them either. So, in sense, the Fae and the dragons could be considered gods. I've read some fictions where they are the gods in that world.
And at the very least, there are some who do. At the very least, there, from my time period, there were a good bit of the Draconry that idolized Bahamut, as he is seen as the father of dragons and whatnot, and definitely the oldest of them. But whether or not that would. Right. And I mean, I haven't actually met a Fae before, so I can't necessarily say anything about that, but I mean, to be fair, when was the last time you ever heard of a Fae wanting to try and be worshipped as a god?
Not something that commonly happens, I suppose.
No, definitely not. I mean, that would definitely beg the question as why a Fae would want to be a god in the first place. I mean, for the most part, aren't they all various tricksters or some shite?
Seems like most of them are.
I believe so. But perhaps the title of godhood doesn't necessarily have to come from them, but others. As we just said, perhaps the concept of a thing is what makes them a god. So perhaps the most tricksy of Fae could be considered the god of mischief.
Well, that's a terrifying thought.
Not because they themselves call them, but because we attribute it to them.
I just realized this definitely begs another question. If Ignis Vol is claiming himself to at the very least be an Arisen deity, does that mean he actually has worshippers in the material plane?
That is another question I thought myself.
I mean, the idea of worship and rebirth, I get that, but ash and destruction in itself, that seems pretty chaotic of a god to be worshipping.
There are many things about ash and rebirth, destruction that could be beneficial to societies. You can't make a good meal without slaughtering a few creatures first. Unless you're vegetarian.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Does that mean that's... Well, if by that logic, wouldn't that mean that Ignis Vol would have some ties to death in some manner?
He did himself say that he is inadvertently attached to it, although not necessarily the god of it.
Right. Dimitri said that there was someone else that, in your time period, is claimed to be a god of death, and you just hear Icarus be like, "Yeah, that's right. He's not an asshole like this guy." Lou, don't kill me.
Well, he's not an asshole much like this guy. No, that was terrible.
Lou, don't kill Dusk.
Please kill me.
Damn.
It was that awful.
Not really, but
Whenever I do accents of Irish, Scottish, Australian, or British, sometimes, more often than not, I tend to blend those four.
oh yeah, no, especially with Irish and Australian.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The only Russian I can do well is French and Russian. Or the only accent I can do well is French and Russian.
Oh, damn.
Well, that's because I speak French and I don't know how I get the Russian.
Russian's not that hard. I'm gonna get canceled for saying that.
Language is hard as hell.
Anyway, so as you all are talking, you sort of continue your way throughout the maze itself to the point where you all decide to set up camp for the quote-unquote night. As
Sorry. Keep going.
you're fine. As you do, who is going to be taking the first watch for the night?
I will.
Okay. Arakion. First off, roll me a
Yay.
perception check.
Son of a bitch.
You see things well, surely.
God damn it! You had to open your mouth.
Sorry.
Alright. So,
No, I'm
Arakion,
yeah.
you are trying to focus on your surroundings and trying to make sure that you stay vigilant. But a lot of what has just kind of transpired is kind of going through your head, in especially the fact of actually, before I do that, what exactly would probably be the major thing about this whole situation that has been kind of going through Rakion's head with everything that you just kind of heard and seen with this supposed new god?
He's definitely just saying to himself, "I gotta get him back to his family."
As you're kind of standing watch, you're kind of looking over to Yuri. Just the thoughts of wanting to get him back to his father, get him back to his family, making sure everyone is safe. Those thoughts do play within your head over and over. And at the very least, one other thought also kind of triggers in your head, as along with the continual vow to get Yuri back to his family and whatnot. Ignis Vol mentioned something about someone telling him that you were the sarcastic type.
Oh yeah.
You sort of think back to that for a brief second. First off, not entirely sure who he was talking about because you didn't really care or wanted to ask at that point, but as that thought just kind of slowly resurfaces back into your head, what is kind of your initial thought response?
I mean, I guess he'd probably wonder who he was talking about, but Arakion at this point doesn't matter to him pretty much.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, there's a guy here that probably is related to me, but yeah, he got himself cooked.
Yeah, nah, you just kind of don't really care at the time. Like you're curious as to who Ignis Vol was talking about, but
Yeah.
not 100%. Like it could be anyone. It could be one of your descendants. It could have been some other idiot who made his way into the maze. It doesn't really matter, but you are kind of slightly curious. And you continue to kind of go through the information through your head and try and stay watch as best you can, occasionally shooting an ash husk that makes its way across because you don't want to really take any fucking chances.
Oh, what if they're just out just trying to get milk?
Too late for that, buddy.
Every time you shoot an Ashok, I wake up and go, shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Before
as
it immediately
inspiring.
falls back asleep.
Oh,
All right. Who's going to be
I'm
taking
kidding.
second watch? Who's going to be taking
I'll take
second watch?
watch.
All right. Frost.
Sorry.
I
You
give you my gun.
I don't need your. I don't
okay,
need your
which gun?
debauchery machine.
Yeah, okay, which gun do you give him? Do you give him the
Oh, no,
dragon or
I was mostly kidding.
yeah, no. So
Yeah, I
Frost.
don't need your
These were like guns.
debauchery.
Yeah, Frost. For the sake of sanity, roll me a perception check.
Sanity? Okay, so if I don't roll a perception check, will that make me insane?
No, this is my own sanity.
Okay, cool. So then I
Or
won't roll. I'm just kidding.
or lack thereof of insanity.
That is a 19.
19. So you are definitely staying vigilant. You still have all the information that had transpired lately going through your mind, but it's not overwhelming to where it is distracting. You are
I'm a Marine. Sorry.
you are
Basically.
yeah, you are just basically keeping your eye out on everything. At the first sight of a possible ash husk, you just either whack it with a mace or throw your gauntlet out and be like, "Channel divinity, fuck off, undead."
No, I just give them a hard stare and they run away.
So, with the information that has kind of been given out on this whole thing, like we've heard like the philosophical side of what Frost has been like kind of thought about this whole process, but what else about everything that happened with Ignisful is kind of going through Frost's mind at this point?
He wonders what this next challenge will really be comprised of, and in particular, what the choice that he has to make is, or not he, but the party. And he wonders why the god decided he had wished that I was making that choice as well, and why he couldn't make me make this choice already. He's wondering what the limits of this guy's powers are, and whether or not my ties to divinity kind of surpass his abilities to control me, and how I could potentially use that to my advantage. So he's debating, like, whether or not he can call upon his own god to intervene with the events going on here, but knowing that Helm is probably a little bit of a younger god than this guy, it's very possible that bringing my god into this... One second.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me turn on my camera.
Welcome back.
He's wondering whether or not... Hello, I have food now. He's wondering whether or not it would be wise to bring in a younger god into this situation, beyond the powers provided by him.
All right.
And he's just weighing his pros and cons and assessing the risk.
Yeah, all right. Go ahead and roll me a insight check.
Very well. Oh, it's not in the pop-up. Insight. That's an 18.
Damn. So, you are kind of thinking back to Ignisful, the things he had said, whether or not you should try and bring Helm into this in a much fuller force than just that of relying on his faith. The idea of seeing a god versus god fight wouldn't be the worst thing in your head. But like as you said, Helm might be more of a younger god than Ignisful, and because of that might not necessarily have the same level of power as him. The one thing that you do remember also is that Ignis Fool did say that there are some of the Arisen deities that don't necessarily agree to the same values as he does at this point in time, but there are some that do. So even within the Arisen the Arisen generation of the Pantheon, there is some manner of discourse before trying to lay out an all-out war between the Prime and the Primordials. What?
Sorry, I have a mute button.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
He wonders if perhaps Igneous, or not Igneous, sorry, that's my other cleric. If Frost and through Frost Helm could, or rather through Helm Frost could commune with these other gods who might disagree with Ignian and maybe team up against this, what is probably lining up to be a tyrannical god. And because he knows that there are bound to be a few like-minded gods amongst the Arisen generation, and maybe, just maybe, some of them are willing to cooperate to handle this one. But it also might seem trivial to these gods.
Yeah, you aren't entirely certain. Like, you can think of a handful of Arisen deities off the top of your head. Cordan being one of them, being the god of the forge. Apparently, Ignis Vol is claiming to be an Arisen deity himself. You know that there is a Arisen deity of death and whatnot, and you can think of a few others off the top of your head, most of which, like, you don't know the entire story of 100% for each of the gods in question, but you do know that there are a good handful of the Arisen generation that may or may not be willing to side with Ignis Vol in this situation. Go ahead and give me another religion check.
Aye. Oh, that's a 15.
15. Alright, so at the very least you can think of possibly one god that could be almost on either side. That being of Caldres, the first Dragonborn, who is seen as the god of war. Because of the fact that he is a god of war, you could see him being on either side of the fight. Because of the fact that if he sided with Ignis Vol, that would definitely lead to a altercation between the Prime and Primordial gods for sure. But if Caldres is more of a benevolent god than not, he could possibly be willing to try and stop Ignis Vol and the other Arisen deities that are trying to do this. However, there is at the very least a lot of discourse and uncertainty as to Caldres' origin. He is known as being the first Dragonborn to have existed, but there are some who believe that he is like one of the first sons of Tiamat, and then there are some that say that he is the son of Bryneth, who is the prime deity of darkness. So, either way, the fact that either Tiamat or Bryneth could at the very least be his mother, neither of those sound good, because Tiamat tried to take over the material plane because of the fact that she felt that the dragons were losing more and more territory to bipedal humanoids. And Bryneth has basically been at constant war with her her polar opposite because of the fact that they are the two prime gods of light and darkness, and never exactly see eye to eye with each other.
Sibling rivalry.
Whether or not these two are siblings, you have no idea. Gods are fucking weird.
There's a
Um,
based on the gods too.
Might as well be at this point, honestly.
Yeah. There are maybe a couple of others that you can think of that are currently known that could also be on the fence, but the fact that Ignis Volt claims to be a arisen deity, and you are uncertain as to how many are in his following, beg the question of how many other arisen deities are not quite 100% known yet. I mean, you yourself are a cleric of Helm, who, by all circumstances, is an arisen deity, but your following, yeah, he's fairly new. The following is small, but in all technicalities, he's, to, at the very least, his following, he is seen as an arisen deity. There could be others out there within the planes that also follow the same structure as you're following with Helm, and might be on the smaller side of devotion within the material plane.
Holy war. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that's, to be fair, that is kind of what it's starting to sound like, which sucks. Because oh, damn.
You know something
Alright.
crazy?
What?
I also got back. Roz got back to me. She told me she just woke up as well.
Oh my god.
I'm so dead.
On my way.
I mean, I can still go for a little bit just to allow him, just to give him something, but
Damn.
yeah, damn.
That was actually kind of.
We should have spammed him.
Both.
No, it wouldn't have done really much, but
I've been looking for you.
Sorry, that was my fun. Yes, I have the courier as my ringtone for text messages from Skyrim.
Oh my god.
I don't know how he finds me everywhere, including my own home. Like, the door's locked. I don't know how he got in here. I had to shoot him, but he would just come back with a clone of himself.
I want to steal.
So no, at the very least, you know that, like, you do know the selection of sort of deities that of the Arisen generation that are currently known, but you, for one, you are a cleric of just one of, to find a way to communicate with the rest is quite possibly out of your reach at this moment. But to be fair, if there is going to be a war, the idea isn't exactly the worst thing.
A war amongst the gods
Just like the Glim.
could be very catastrophic, though.
Yeah, it usually is.
For us immortals, especially. Where do they find their battleground but on our plane?
Is there anything else that Frost would like to do before the end of his shift?
He's going to make bacon mac and cheese. No, I'm just kidding. He already did that while contemplating everything.
Yuri
Um,
wakes up and is like, "Ooh, what's that smell?"
the smell of cooked bacon and mac and cheese wafts within the mix of the smell of lava and ash within the air.
You guys wake up and I'm like, sorry guys, the bacon was a little burnt.
Which makes
That's
a
not
lot of
that's not just a joke. I actually did kind of burn my bacon.
Oh,
Oh no, not the bacon.
if you
You should
think
make some
like
lava chicken.
lava chicken.
Yeah.
But
No, is there any? Yeah,
no,
is there
I
anything
can't think
Frost
of
would
any.
like to do?
I can't
No?
think of anything.
All right.
He summons upon his godly powers and annihilates the entire maze. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Roll for holy nuke. No.
Oh shit.
Nat 20, let's go.
Yeah, actually, for
I'm gonna-
for my own curiosity now, what level do you get divine intervention?
Oh boy.
I don't think I get divine intervention until. Hang on, let me click on the button.
Yeah.
10th level.
Yeah. So
I'm not that far away.
Yeah, but it's not gonna happen while you're here at the maze. I'll tell you that much. I'm not gonna let you pump 2 levels into this fucking thing just to be able to do a holy nuke.
Oh.
Yeah, nice try. Okay. With that, at this point, Yuri, you're the last one to do a shift. First off, roll a perception check if you would be so kind.
Oh, jeepers, leapers, creepers, peepers, weepers.
13 total.
Okay. So, you are still keeping a decent eye out. Like any ash husk that seems to be going around, you do manage to either frighten it off or just throw a fucking axe at it and it goes away. But your mind is well enough distant. Like the idea that you just found your dad and then a supposed god just basically said, nope, not today, and made
You're
him disappear again. You are heartbroken because you feel like that you hadn't seen your father in so long and you had just now been reunited once again only to have him taken away again by supposedly divine divine purposes again that as of right now kind of feel like they're complete bullshit again.
Yeah. I think Yuri's major feeling is like complete and total like helplessness. I think Yuri as a guy is like, since he became a father, what he prided himself on was being like, I know what to do, you know, in every situation, regardless of how it evolves. Like, I know how to. Or Yuri likes to think he knows how to counterplan and do XYZ in the event that ABC. Right now, Yuri's like, what the absolute fuck? You know, it's just a thing of like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Years of not seeing his dad, sees him for the first time for like a day, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
It's just a feeling of like, what Yuri's major question in his mind is just like, what's the point? He just feels like he's just one guy.
Now, as these thoughts are sort of raging in your mind, you hear a feminine voice kind of say towards you, "For what it's worth, I am sorry it turned out this way." You turn and kind of appearing as almost a projection within the flames of the campfire. Once again is Rhea. Her appearance this time a little bit different for some reason. She still has the sort of flaming-ish hair, but it's not bright and is not much as on fire as it was before. Hi, Lou.
Hello.
Hallelujah.
Anyway, and her skin, where you've seen it's in kind of a tannish bronze, you see now is not bronze, but sort of a paler white. She, you can obviously tell it's still her, because who else would appear in a fucking fire pit?
Me.
But but there's something about her that is definitely off. Like, it's almost strained, or something is not entirely right with her at this point.
I think Yuri hesitates and is like, I don't mean to pry, Rhea. Is something the matter?
Yeah, something's the matter. My own son decided to usurp me in my own fucking domain, and now I am trapped.
It would seem we are all dealing with the fallout of your boy.
Yeah, I apologize. As I said, it's not entirely justified in this case, as the last time we talked, you were very pissed at me, but
I do apologize. I knew
No. You had every reason to be angry, and honestly, the only reason that I'm actually surprised I'm able to talk with you right now. Because things kind of gotten a lot more complicated since we last spoke. Things were already kind of complicated, but now shit just got worse.
What is going on?
Yeah, long story short, so when I say I am trapped, I'm not necessarily I'm kind of talking more in a magical sense. You see, she pulls up her sleeve and you see that there are similar sort of markings and whatnot to those that you've seen on yourself and Malachi and your father, but these sort of appear to almost be designed in a way to where they look to be as if they are chains that are, for lack of better words, tattooed around sort of the cuff of her wrist and make her way around and up her arms. And it's like, I am quite literally, magically trapped in quite possibly the. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to be able to mystically bullshit my way out of this. So you know that human girl that has been talked about in various fucking myths and whatnot, and has been occasionally trapped here in the maze?
Keep hearing about it, yes.
Yeah, so I'm kind of trapped where she is acting as my vessel right now.
How is... You claimed...
In my defense, it's not entirely the worst thing that could have happened. I've heard of gods being trapped in urns and various other stupid things.
Okay, but...
Now, did you... Well, my son somehow managed to get said human from the material plane and throw her here within the maze. And somehow used various means of magic to prevent it. So, basically he forced me to step down in magic means, and as soon as he found the girl, decided to thrust. Oh god, that actually sounds way bad. God damn. Okay.
Just ignore the word and go for it.
No, this is even the goddess is kind of looking at this and it's like, look, okay, to be fair, I don't even know where he's getting this magic, because it is nothing I have taught him, nor did Azir teach him any of this. I don't even know if he's met Azir. He probably has. They're both Arisen deities, so it is possible, but...
What reason would he have to be communing with gods that would teach him magic that could force a major deity to step down from the throne?
Honestly, I have no idea. I just know that for some reason, Iggy was very pissed about the idea of me letting this woman go. Like, yeah, as he, like, Frost is hearing this in the background, is just laughing in his sleep.
I think I'm dreaming. I am not.
You see Rhea kind of look, and it's like, okay, anyway, yeah, I know, that sounds really childish, but he's my son, okay? I can call him that.
No, we're not laughing at the name or the fact that you're calling it. We're just laughing at the fact that he said that to us, and after that, like, there's no way I could have taken him seriously.
Your son
is like, he's like,
you just meet this mysterious ash god, and he's like, just call me Iggy.
I could just picture, like, later on, we're like facing off against him, and he's like, he's beating us down. He's like, any last words? And I just look at him and say, your name is Iggy.
Do you think he's fancy?
I bet he is.
Rhea is just yeah. Rhea goes, and Rhea just kind of looks and is like,
your son's an idiot.
yeah. No, she goes, to be fair, Ignisvol has been always kind of irritated about how the human woman had, like, didn't want any power and whatnot. And to be fair, she was very, not necessarily aggressive, but she was very kind of sarcastic in the way she said that. She said no, which, I mean, to be fair, yes, was a little irritating. It was the first time that I can think of that someone has gone through the maze, has been given the opportunity of being a champion and has just straight up said no in the most weird, not necessarily weirdest way possible, but
Rude.
yeah, it's definitely rude. I will say that. And oh god, now I'm actually starting to realize why she said that. Her family is so messed up. Holy hells.
For God, she's not very observant.
You're asleep.
Yeah, no, no, this isn't him. This isn't Frost saying a damn thing. This is
Yeah.
all the disembodied voice of Dusk.
Yeah.
Go back to sleep, Frost, you're drunk.
Anyway.
I am sorry that, again, that time we met, I yelled at you. I had no idea what the situation was.
Yeah, well, it's not like I was entirely being forthcoming about it, but then again, when I am myself, I am fairly cryptic. To be fair, we were all told that we had to be, at the very least, some form of cryptic when dealing with mortals. Especially those that had some manner of being tied to our faith too. And I mean, we just had to go along with it. And after a certain millennia or so, it kind of sticks with you.
No, I mean that does make sense when you get into sort of the habit of the behavior.
Exactly, right. Ignis did not understand that at all. Like, I tried, like, yes, okay, he is my actual son. Like, I know, like, I know he's supposed to be. I know he's supposed to be like a fire elemental or whatnot. I mean, a lot of that is kind of untrue. I mean, yes, he was born of fire, which is part of that. But he did technically also have, by your definition, a father who wasn't that of fire, but we're not getting into that right now, please. But
Did you
Scandalous.
Did you have to? I'm going to leave it alone.
again, no, yeah, we're gonna leave that because we are. Anyway.
Some little ash husk of a mouse walks up. I'm curious. I want to know.
Shut it.
Are you
Anyway.
Are you a slut?
Yes.
Anyway,
I'm gonna
but
mute myself.
yeah, please. Yuri, when I said that I didn't want to see basically the equivalent of my children being thrown in here, I was being serious in that. For as long as your family and those within the material plane that still follow me to some manner, which still impresses me, but it was hard to see people coming into this maze only to realize that shit changed and it's harder for them to get out than what they originally were told. It hurts to see members of your family continue to be in here and basically be separated from their families, their people, and to have their faith and devotion just whittled away to the point of becoming these undead elemental monstrosities that my son has created. It was painful to watch, and when I still had power, I tried to tell him to stop this. And, well, we all know how that went.
Okay. Rhea, permission to speak frankly.
This is the first time I've spoken this frank in a long-ass time, so why the hell not?
I have not been studying gods for a very long time. To be honest, there is a lot about it that is still mystical and deified for me, but
Yeah, no shit.
Okay, well, you don't have to call me a fucking idiot, but like, I mean to suggest that it. I take your word now for what you actually feel about my family being trapped in here for ages. I cannot imagine that was easy, and I know I had my own grievances with you and with the maze as a concept before, but I was angry with you, and that was unjust. You have shown me, it's naive as it may sound to people who have studied gods for longer than I have. You have shown me that gods can feel. I was under the impression for a long time that gods were just one stoic, blank thing forever, but...
Oh, some are. I will say that. There are some.
I am just grateful that you are not one of those. And I'm sorry that...
I try. I try. Like I've said, fire is one of those things that does have its own dual personality. It is a symbol of destruction. It is a symbol of uncontrollability, of chaos, but it is also a symbol of warmth, of hearth, and of light. For the longest time, I tried to play into that aspect of fire more so than the destructive part because, well, I've seen, like, Genasia's side. I have seen all of those who are under my devotion as, to a certain extent, my children. It's one of the reasons why I offered that dwarf divinity originally. And then he refused. And then accepted it eons later, but regardless, they are a part of my power in which I have to be as caring for them as I can. Now, I'll admit that there are some gods who communicate or intervene with those of their faith a lot more. There are some who are a lot less. Honestly, I don't even... like, there are some I'm uncertain about, but... like, I'm fairly certain that... honestly, I don't even know if Zathras even has a church or any form of a mass devotion, but that's beside the point. I have tried to show the goodness of fire for as long as I have been a god. Because when I was an elemental, well, I wasn't as intelligently aware or cognate as I was as I have been as a god. And even then, I don't think I've been the most omnipresent. I don't want a war with my own son, or at the very least with whatever Arisen deities he has gotten into his into his stead contract? I don't know, but at the very least, if he can be stopped here within the maze and cut off from this source of power, that would be great, to be fair. But
my friends and I will do all we can.
no, and if it makes you feel any better, your father is still alive.
That does take a weight off my chest. Rhea, there is something I want you to know, if nothing else. I think, this is just one man's opinion, I think you have done a good job of showing the warmth and hearth of a fire.
I appreciate that. Now, I can't keep this connection for too much longer. I'm surprised I can hold it for this long, but whatever happens, whatever choice or trial that Ignisvol is kind of got going for you, just make the choice that you feel is the right for you. And whether it involves me or not, I can say at the very least, if I regain power here in the maze and let you all out, I will do whatever I can to make sure that you and your family will no longer be connected to this goddamn maze.
I would willingly be in your debt should you do that. And I offer her a handshake.
He reaches out to try and shake your hand. The sort of projection itself still being of fire, so you can feel it's not necessarily as a hand, but that of a fire that is kind of reaching its way towards you.
Oh, right.
And before you can truly get a full grasp to shake her hand, the image dissipates and the fire returns to its normal state. In which you just kind of stand there with your hand out and you're like, oh, right. Fire. Ow.
Ah, fuck.
That being said, y'all get a long rest, even though you don't necessarily need one. But at the very least, for most of y'all, it will clear the fucking level of exhaustion you got from long ass time ago that should have been cleared by now, and I never did anything more with.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do it for the others as well. But either way, you all arise from... Oh. It doesn't actually clear it. That's bullshit. Okay, I'll just hit end. That is kind of bullshit, but moving on.
Oh, shard.
Fucking shard. Anyway, you all wake up and continue throughout the rest of the maze. With Malachi and Yuri probably staying more at the head of this, as at the very least for you, Yuri, you want to get to whatever the end of the maze is so that you can finally confront this supposed Arisen deity who has been causing all of this fucking bullshit, and hope that whatever happens, you can get a chance to actually save your father and, I guess, Rhea at the same fucking time.
Yeah, I was gonna say Rhea sounds very remorseful, and then I realized what her situation is, and I was like, oh. For a god, she sounds very remorseful, and then she's like,
It's
yeah,
ju-
I'm
it's just like-
fucked. Oh.
Yeah. And with that, honestly, I think we are going to call the session. Lou, I'm sorry you got here a bit on the later end, but have fun watching the video when it goes up, so then you know what the hell's going on. But that'll be the end for tonight. Thank you all for playing, and thank whoever is watching for watching. We will continue next week as we get closer to the end of this story arc and getting closer to getting this whole thing resolved, so then Yuri hopefully won't have to go through more bullshit.
Dad's back.
Oh, but that's the fun part.
That is the fun part.
This is where the-
But it's the fun part we are not getting into this week. So with that being said, hope you all have a good one, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye, stream.
Bye.
Bye.